Hello again and welcome to CBA's weekly blog. I'm Patrick Hurd, Principal Consultant at Community Business Australia. And again, I'm joined by Wilson's Advisory. And this week I'm joined by Saxon New. Hello, Saxon. And
Hello, Patrick, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Again, we're talking virtually. That's the way of the world these days. And Saxon is a wealth advisor with his colleague Nick Jones, who we met last week. And we're continuing our series of conversations around how NFP boards can utilise organisations like Wilson's. And today I want to touch on, we've got this environment of low interest rates at the moment, and this seems like a pretty vital service that you provide to NFP boards that want to really look at, utilising their balance sheet strength for their future growth. But I often get a sense, Saxon, that there's some reluctance of boards to engage with wealth managers. What are some of the barriers you see and concerns that are raised in engaging with wealth managers?
Yeah, sure, Patrick, no problem. I guess we've seen a few sort of reasons why boards are a little bit reluctant, at least initially, to engage with advisors. Some of them, well, the first one, of course, is the fear of the unknown. It's the preference for the status quo. And look, I can understand that, of course. It's a lot easier. But you're sort of, as you said, you're sort of left with investing in largely just term deposits, and it's not a great environment for that. But fear of the unknown is certainly one of that. One of the factors, the concern of hidden fees as well. I think that there's a lot of sort of press coverage on concerns about advisors perhaps hiding fees, but it's certainly not the case. It never has been the case here, and I presume for the vast majority of advisors that wouldn't be the case. But it's definitely no longer legal to do it at all. So everything is disclosed. So concern of hidden fees is one. Lots of control. I think that you've got a board or management that are obviously very used to having control over their balance sheet, their investments. And so it's a little bit hard sometimes to let go of their cash. The other one is that there's this assumption, this notion that investing in cash is safe. And so investing in anything outside of cash is just really gambling and just high risk. And that's a concern for some boards. And the final one, I guess I'd like to highlight is just that concern about committing investments and being locked up for a period of time. And so there's that reluctance to say, oh, well, we better just not go down that path, because if we give away a certain amount of money to be invested, we won't be able to make use of those funds for a period of time. So I think there's
they're all very, very legitimate concerns that, again, I hear raised as well with conversation boards. So how have you at Wilson's worked with not-for-profits to really help them work through some of those barriers and concerns?
Yeah, so Patrick, as I said, it was probably more of an initial concern, and it was really driven by the fact that just perhaps weren't aware of the benefits of engaging an advisor. So, I mentioned the concern about hidden fees. I mean, that everything has to be disclosed now and legally, and it's always been the case for us, and as I said, most advisors, where fees have to be were disclosed in the past anyway, but it's a legal obligation to do that now before anyone signs on the dotted line. So that's no issue at all. Loss of control. Look, there's going to be some loss of control, I guess, in the fact that you're delegating some of the investments to professional managers like ourselves. However, it's very clear what's being invested. So we are, again, legally obliged to advise our not-for-profit organisations in terms of what we invest in. And so every time we put on a trade, for example, the organisation knows exactly what we're doing. So every time we buy, say, for example, Telstra or any investment for that matter, they are aware. We have to send through a contract note. And in addition to that, we have the ability to advise to show our not-for-profit organisations what their portfolio valuation is on pretty much a live basis as well. So it's not really an issue at all. And then when it comes to being, cash is the safest thing. I actually tend to disagree with that. And I think that there's this notion, if you put everything in cash, it's going to be fine. But the issue you have is that cash at the current environment that we're in is really returning very low return. So anywhere between 50 to 80 basis points at the moment. And then in addition to that, there's concerns, of course, that inflation is going to increase. And so if you have inflation increasing with the current interest rate environment, you're looking at a negative return. So it's not to say you have no investments in cash. On the contrary, we certainly believe that you should have some investments in cash, but it's equally important to have a reasonable amount also in other types of assets as well, be that fixed income, domestic equities, international equities, or alternative investments as well. So they're sort of things that we look at. And in terms of the weightings, we sort of work on that for each organisation. And finally, just that comment about locking up funds and not being able to have access to it. Whilst we believe that it's worthwhile to have investments for up to 5 years, a minimum of 5 years, it's sort of the recommendation for growth assets like equities. It's not locked up. You can certainly access it at any time. And in fact, if you needed to access the funds for whatever reason, it might be an emergency or it might be a change of strategic direction, you have access to those funds basically what we call T+2. So it's 2 days, basically 2 working days or 3 working days maximum before you have access to the funds. So it's really quite a liquid type of investment.
Excellent. Saxon, thank you for explaining that. Very important, I think very relevant for not-for-profit organisations as they look to really tap into some of the strength of their balance sheet for their future growth investments. So thanks again. Until next time, stay safe. Bye for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick. All the best.